We want to just try to see how many of our committee members are still not here. So I see some of you are on the computer and we have your names. I have Pastor McLaughlin, I have Nick Whalen, I have Tanya Gale. I don't know if anybody's on the phone from our committee. They need to, for attendance purposes, just if they could let us know that they're here. I think I saw the police department come on, but I don't know where they went.
And Liz is here.
And Liz, I see Liz is here, yep. Just give it one more minute and then we'll start. Here's the police. Okay, we got the police. We're missing quite a few, huh?
And Sean, Dennis, Don, Daryl, Lily. That's it. We know John, Barbara, and John. And Clark Osborne
is here. Yes, he's here. We're just going to give them another minute to get on. Don't want to start without them. So bear with us. Okay, so we're going to start. We are missing quite a few people. Maybe it's kind of early.
Because we are experiencing difficulties with audio conference. You have that?
No. Can everybody hear me? Yeah? Okay, I'm getting thumbs up. Okay, we're getting some kind of notice that we're in some kind of problem. So I want to thank everyone for attending the third virtual forum of the Orangetown Police Committee for public comment. We've had quite a few more meetings, but this is the third one for public comment. Well, our goal tonight is to hear from all of you. I just want to give a quick summary of kind of what we've done so far, where we're at, and what we still need to do in a very short amount of time. So just first of all, start by knowing that all this can be found on the town website, and we continue to update it with daily, basically, with any new correspondence that comes in. So anything that comes in, emails, whatever, is being uploaded there. So all correspondence is going to be up there. So that it's, basically we're out in the open with everything. Not including tonight, the committee has had 5 committee meetings and 1 public presentation to the town board. The following presentations, and for those who've been following, you may be aware of this, that have already been made were the Behavioral Response Team, or BERT, the Mental Health Committee of Rockland Coalition to End the New Jim Crow, Chris Statner from the Rockland County Police Academy and Public Safety Academy on police training requirements, Orangetown Police Department on the New York State Division of Criminal Justice Services accreditation process, Orangetown Police Department presentation on the current general orders and policies and procedures with regard to complaints against police officers, and Orangetown Police responds to all questions from the members of the committee and the public. And just to follow up on that, it's all on the website. So some private residents had submitted questions, some members submitted questions. If you have questions, now's the time to do it. We have a dedicated email at policereform@orangetown.com. If you send questions, we will get those answers, and it will be, again, up on the website so everybody has them. But at this point, we're kind of in the home stretch here. So if you do have questions or comments, whatever you want, again, it's going to be part of the record. Please get it in as soon as you can. And then in addition, some of the committee members and I have participated in the Rockland People's Panel on Police and the RPPP presentation. So I've attended both of those. So I just want to take this opportunity to thank the members of the committee for volunteering to be on this committee. It has been, time. A lot of time was dedicated to this. We had to learn a lot, and it's like I said to somebody, I've worked for the town in the capacity as an attorney for 24 years before I was elected, and I thought I knew most of how the police department ran and things like that. And I can personally tell you that I've learned a lot. So there's a lot to learn, especially for people who have not been involved, to kind of learn where we're at as a baseline for where we want to go. And we can only recommend change when we really truly understand what the current policies and procedures are. So they put a lot of work into it. And I say that because people are quick to criticize that we didn't do it right. We didn't, whatever the case may be. But every one of these people that volunteered and stepped up to be on this committee did it because they were interested in doing what was the best for the town. We're all doing our best. And what I would just say to that is that, and I'm kind of jumping to the end, is that this is just the beginning. This is not the end. One of the requirements of the executive order is that, we get a report and adopted before April 1st, and that's okay. But this is going.
Yes, indeed, I do. I've reviewed your minutes, and you might have had an extended email exchange. And as I said in my emails to you, while I applaud the presentations you've hosted by the Mental Health Committee of the Rockland Coalition and the New Jim Crow and other groups, I'm curious to know what specific action items have been proposed by your committee to root out racial bias in policing and white supremacist elements in police culture. As the recent insurrection at Capitol Hill revealed, I'm sure to the shock of yourself and many members of your force, a number of police were involved in that insurrection and are members of militias and white supremacist groups like the Oath Keepers and 3 Percenters, as well as the Proud Boys. An abundance of evidence in criminological studies suggests that white supremacist elements do exist in law enforcement across the states, and the governor's order is emphatic on this point. It's in fact a response to racial justice unrest prompted by police murders of unarmed Black and brown people. So I'm curious to know what steps your committee is proposing to address these two questions, racial bias in policing and racist elements in police culture.
Well, I'm certainly, I'll let others jump in if they want to respond. I'll say a couple of things. One, one of the presentations you received was from Chris Stratner up at the police academy, and they talked about what they're doing up there and what they're looking to do moving forward, which leads back to this committee and what we're doing and the recommendations that are going to come from us. So they're going to be, every committee member is entitled to make a recommendation. I know I have some in mind. They will be available before the March 9th, the specific recommendations. But we all recognize what went on, and I just don't like to ever speak in, I like to deal with specifics. So we're going to talk about our training, what we can do better. Again, I would say check back on to see the specifics of what we're going to be proposing that the town board adopt.
May I ask a follow-up question?
You may.
I reviewed the minutes for the meetings, and while I did see a mention of the Stratner presentation, you'll forgive me, I don't recall there being any very granular detail about the recommendations you just mentioned to address the question of racial bias in policing or racist elements in what I'm broadly calling police culture. Can you expand on what you just said, which is that in his presentation, he addressed those questions?
Well, he did. He talked about some of the training that they offer. He also talked about the fact that they're going to be working, and I'm not saying that this is my conclusion, okay? I'm saying this is what he presented, was that they would be working with the New Jim Crow group to incorporate, to bring them in to help identify where we can fill some gaps, where we could add additional training. They were very much open to working with that organization, and actually countywide. This is a countywide issue, needless to say. It's probably further than that, but so yeah, so I'm saying that's what he presented. I'm not saying that other committee members may have other ideas. I've actually been in touch with Nyack Hospitals talking about offering some kind of program. Again, this is the beginning. It's far from the end, but yeah, I mean, I think we'll come when March 9th comes, or before then, you'll see what our proposals are. You may think we need more, you may think it's great, but I would say to check back and see what kind of proposals myself and other members of this committee come up with.
I'm sorry, I'm still a little confused. You keep referring to the measures that will be taken in the police academy, but can you be specific about them? In other words, are you talking about bias training, sensitivity training? what precisely is the coalition and the new Jim Crow going to do in partnership with the police academy?
Again, I hate to speak from the top of my head because that could be, but they were definitely working together to enhance what the academy was offering.
Is the academy already offering bias training?
They are already offering bias training.
Okay.
They are, and my chief could speak further, but we also send up officers from our department to get trained to be able to come and then train further with our officers. Again, it may be a question of, is that enough? Maybe not. We may want to seek to have all the officers go up and get trained, and maybe that's something that's in the works. But my point is that yes, they do currently offer it 100%. I know our officers get trained to train others, and again, I think when we come down to it, we'll have to look at you said the grant, exactly what they're offering to do with the academy, and then where we think we need to enhance on that.
Would you agree that given the abundance of news stories and studies by criminologists at places like John Jay about the truly alarming involvement of elements within law enforcement in white supremacist and militia groups like the Oath Keepers and Three Percenters, would you agree that this is a problem and that the governor's order intends for us to focus on not just racial bias in policing, but racist elements within what I'm calling broadly police culture?
I'm going to guess there was a question there, but it got lost somewhere in translation. What I will say is I think the governor's executive order speaks for itself. The 200 and something page manual that I read every page of, and I highlighted it and underscored, and speaks for itself. I don't even know what the 3%ers are, so I certainly can't comment on what they're doing. But, again, what we're focused on here is on the Orangetown Police Department. I'm not going to worry about what the 3%ers are doing.
One thing that some sources are advising is that officers, when they're hired, there be a forensic analysis of their social media trail for racist posts. We have a sheriff right here in Rockland County who was recycling far-right memes and spewing racism on his social media account. And so that would seem to be a very effective way of weeding out white supremacist elements. Has your committee considered that approach?
I have not heard that approach recommended. I do know that they do undergo psychological exams. They do a background exam. I'm going to guess, and that's never a good thing to do, but we will certainly follow up, that they do some sort of investigation into that. I would defer to the chief or on what kind of background investigation they do, but I'm going to think in this day and age, they're doing some kind of social media search. I don't know if it's forensic, but I don't think it's a bad idea. I have absolutely no problem with it. We're all subject to that nowadays, so I have no problem with that, but I don't know what they currently do.
Great. Well, I'll defer to the others, and my apologies for taking up so much of the community's time. Surely there are others who want to ask questions. One last respectful request. You seem to indicate you're not absolutely certain that kind of social media paper trail analysis is done before hiring an officer. Would it be possible for you to look into that and then raise that data point at the next meeting of the EO 203 committee?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Supervisor, I could answer that. We do check social media as part of the background check.
Specifically for racial bias, officer?
I'm not going to get too far into what we do with the background, but we do check their social media, and we do certainly, if there's indicators of racial bias, we certainly would address that in our background. Absolutely. That's not something that we would condone. We would never condone somebody who conducts themselves in that manner.
So do I understand you to be saying that would be a disqualifying factor for the hiring of that individual?
We complete a thorough background search, so there is things like that would certainly be something that would be part of the process of getting somebody disqualified. Certainly, there's a lot of elements that would disqualify somebody, and that would certainly be one of them.
Thank you for addressing that, officer.
Okay, so let's see. Do I have anybody else? And again, I apologize for our system. It is not a very easy one. But if you can unmute yourself, we'll be able to see it here and take that as a sign that you'd like to. Robin wants to speak. Okay, we got a speaker. Robin, you're up.
Hi, how are you? Thank you so much for presenting. I appreciate this opportunity. My name is Raymond Schneider. I'm a resident of Pearl River. And I was listening to, I think it was your last presentation a couple of weeks ago, and you were giving some statistics on the racial backgrounds of police officers in Orangetown, and it seemed to be overwhelmingly white. And I know you said you did some outreach to try to diversify a bit more without much luck. Just wondering how you can push that a little bit further, what you've been thinking on that.
So a couple things I will tell you. Long before executive order, I'm only in office 1 year. Before this order ever came around, I was looking for ways to get a more diverse police department. And we unfortunately have to deal with civil service law, which makes it a little bit on the tricky side because they have to be a resident, they have to place on the list, whoever it may be. So we did actually look into, you can sometimes hire off of a separate list if you have a need in the department. So I need a Spanish speaking officer, I can go to a different list. We've looked into those alternatives. I think at the end of the day, is that civil service is going to have to, I think either, and I don't want to say because I don't know for certain, but I mean, look, either hire off of a county list as opposed to a town list. But when we're hiring off the town list, we're just not getting a diverse candidate group. So again, going back to before that, even the executive order happened, I had reached out when the test was being given to the NAACP, to the NIAC Center, to the schools. I was trying to get the word out about the exam being given because that's the first step. Now race is an interesting question though, which just came up. The test got canceled last year and they're going to be holding it coming up in the near future. And there's a question about whether they're going to leave the cutoff. So those who had applied beforehand, I'd like to see them open it up, but this again goes above me. So I'm going to have to deal with maybe one of our assemblymen or the governor to basically go to that list to maybe get people who hadn't thought about applying for the exam. But yeah, it is something. And again, for those who don't know, I've been in the town for 24 years. I worked here as an attorney, and I remember back when I started there being like one female police officer. So we're making progress, but it's very slow. But I do appreciate it, and it's 100% on my recommendation. How we get there, we'll have to figure it out. But it's on one of my recommendations that I have already for the committee. So,
thank you very much. And I mean, I think just in general, I feel similarly to other situations in our town. Just whether I'm looking at the school board, whether I'm looking at different town zoning boards or whatnot, it all looks the same. And it would be, I think we have a big opportunity there to do better.
Yep, I agree with you 100%. Thank you. Okay. Anybody else want to speak? No? Any committee members?
This is Pastor McLaughlin. Supervisor, I know you mentioned earlier that you were on the Rockland Policing's panel on policing. Rockland People's Panel on Policing.
I know. Just say RPP. I agree.
And they're doing some different things in meeting and things of that nature. And I know they plan on giving some recommendations out later. Is that something that you would consider, using in the recommendations for our town as well, even though it's not they're doing for Rockland, as a county, but would that be something that we would consider
Absolutely
using? I'm
gonna thank you for asking that question because I have done outreach to the RPPP. I've spoken with some of the members, and yes, and I think they understand that we're waiting. I did encourage them to get it to us sooner rather than later. But again, I want everyone to understand that this is not the end by any means. So, the sooner they get it to us, the better. But if it gets here later, of course. I mean, again, like I said, I actually sat in on both of their presentations and I found them informational, whatever. So I welcome exactly whatever, and they know where to find me. So I'm sure they will when they're ready. But absolutely.
And one thing I think that would be great in the future is if, maybe there's a partnership formed somehow. Since we're saying that this is just the beginning of what we're doing, maybe a partnership with them in some capacity, or to be able to help, in the future would be great. Absolutely.
I mean, again, we've reached out personally to the NIAC Center, to the Pride Center, to the high schools. It's tough with COVID and these virtual meetings. And, I would love to see some members of our youth from the community get involved. We are still working on, personally, I'm not giving up on a Survey Monkey. I've actually reached out to both the NIAC Center and the Pride Center to see if the directors would kind of help with the questions and make sure they're that they're geared in the right direction. Again, hopefully before we do our final, but if it's not done before then, it's going to be something that we're going to do into the future, whether with the RPPP or on our own or committee here. But absolutely. Okay, anybody else? Mark? MD? There you go.
Following the point made by the pastor, you and I have had exchanges in which meaning you, Supervisor Kenny, for those listening in, have had exchanges in which I noted the overwhelmingly white complexion of this EO 203 panel and the appearance, at least, that the majority of the participants are either law enforcement, DAs, assistant DAs. At one point, there was a member of ICE, incredibly enough, to my mind, as well as elected officials who, as I noted in my emails to you, depend for their political fortunes on the goodwill and support of powerful police unions and the rank and file, who constitute a very substantial constituency in places like Pearl River. To the question of ensuring that BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and people of color are well represented in these meetings and on this panel, I would exhort you to meet privately, if they're willing, with the steering committee of RPPP, as well as the Rockland Coalition and the new Jim Crow. Whatever secret they have, they're doing something right, because I've attended many of their meetings, and there's not a single Zoom meeting that doesn't have at least 60 or 70 participants who are overwhelmingly people of color. So it's certainly possible to incentivize communities of color to attend these meetings. And perhaps you can reach out to them to find out what they're doing right. The governor's order makes it quite clear, to use the term of art, BIPOC voices should be centered in this discussion. It was prompted by mass protests against police brutality and police murder of unarmed Black and brown people. And the process should, I believe, and I believe the governor's order at least makes this clear in spirit, should be guided by BIPOC people. They should be setting the agenda. So their presence on the panel and in these meetings is vitally important. One reason they may not be turning out and may not have volunteered for the panel, and this is pure speculation on my part, but I do know this to be true, at least in South Nyack, where I sit on our EO 203 committee, is that people of color have told me they are fearful of speaking their minds with law enforcement in the room. They fear retribution. We won't debate whether or not fear of retaliation is legitimate. My point is simply that they have told me they fear it, and other BIPOC people I've spoken to have said that their members of their communities have told them this. So I would simply exhort you and your fellow panelists to consider reaching out to the leaders of the two groups you've already connected with to see if they might not have some viable strategies for increasing the participation of the very people whose brutalization prompted the governor's executive order.
Thank you. I think that's one of the reasons we talked about doing a Survey Monkey to give people another place to go. I just, so you know, Nikki Hines, who is on the RPPP, had originally been on this panel on our committee and then opted out. So there was outreach made. You know, again, it's easy to sit back and criticize and say things could be done differently, but we're moving forward at this point. And like I said, I spoke to Michael Lockett on the RPPP. Multiple times. We were supposed to have a conference call and then it got canceled. I've told them I'm here when they're ready, and they're aware of it, but I'll continue to do the outreach. That's all I can do.
Well, and point of fact, I'm doing the opposite of criticizing. I'm offering you constructive criticism and a positive suggestion, which is to say a viable strategy for increasing BIPOC participation in your panel and in these meetings. Respectfully, I submitted to you the suggestion that you approach leaders of those two groups with whom you've already made connections and see if they couldn't offer some strategies for increasing that participation, which you avowedly want.
Absolutely. Actually, now that you say it, I think maybe I should see if they would do a joint meeting with us.
I can't speak for them. I'm not a member of their steering committee, but it sounds like a perfectly commendable impulse.
Okay.
Do you have any idea why Nikki Hines opted out?
No, I don't. I actually, she said she had personal obligations. I was extremely disappointed, and I told her that I was disappointed for no other reason that I thought she would have been a great asset to have here. So yeah, I mean, you know, I guess she originally was on it before the RPP was formed, maybe when that got formed. I mean, I'm not throwing stones at Nikki Hines. I just want you to know that we certainly did reach out, you know, to the NAACP, and we have Tanya Gale from NAACP, and, you know, we did do outreach. Again, it could, you know, so I appreciate your comments, and we'll see if there's anybody else who wants to comment.
And before you move on, in case there is not anyone else, let me just say that one thing we found effective, if it's a strategy you would consider, and I offer this purely in the spirit of constructive, not even criticism, merely information sharing. Our committee found that it was effective to hold the occasional meeting where law enforcement was not present, and BIPOC people told us that they felt more empowered to speak up. I'm simply dropping that in your suggestion box.
Okay, I appreciate it. Look, I said we're open to all suggestions and comments. And, you know, we unfortunately, we had planned before, you know, COVID took a turn again to go actually into Nyack. And I know Don Hammond offered, you know, the community center, or whatever, to actually meet in person. But, you know, COVID has another plan for us, but it won't be here forever. So we will be able to do that. Like I said, going to the future, I really would like to see more, you know, involvement, I guess, is for lack of a better word. And I think that goes a long way. Okay, so I'm gonna ask one more time. It doesn't seem like anybody's unmuting themselves. They're all shy tonight. What can I tell them? Okay, on that note, again, I'm gonna remind everybody, February, 23rd, for any questions, comments. And then we want to be able to present the draft by March 9th. So you get those comments in. We will try to get the draft ready as soon as possible so you have time to review it and comment. So on that note, I'm going to wish everybody a good night and thank you for joining us.